Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jake Loesch. I am the Executive Director of Citizens League. Thank you all for joining us for today's interconnected conversation on workforce challenges and opportunities in local government across Minnesota. Um, Citizens League, for those of you who may be unaware or unfamiliar, we were first founded in 1952, so we've been around for over 73 years. We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. We focus on civic engagement and public policy research. We do public policy projects like we're here to talk about today, our report on local government workforce. We do a number of events and convenings for educational opportunities like Interconnected and our Mind Opener series. We run an internship program for BIPOC college students at the Capitol called Capitol Pathways, which is celebrating 10 years of success, more than 300 students that we have partnered with host organizations over the last decade to gain that direct real-world experience at the state capitol. And we also just launched a new program called the Minnesota Legislative Exchange, where we will be facilitating relationship building between legislators of different political parties. So we will be working to pair up one Democrat and one Republican in the Minnesota State Legislature to do exchange trips, to visit each other's districts, to really build that trust and bipartisan collaboration in the legislature that we sure could use a lot more of these days. So a little bit of a slice of the work that we at Citizens League do and how we spend our time. This was a really exciting project for us to work on. We really appreciate the partnership of the League of Minnesota Cities and the Association of Minnesota Counties that helped us bring this to life, really to kind of identify, workforce challenges are across the board. There are a few industries that aren't facing them, but there are a lot of unique aspects to what that might look like in local government. And so over the last, 6 months from kind of fall of last year into early spring of this year, we dug in. We talked to nearly 1,000 people across the state, many of whom are working in local government, heard a ton of incredible feedback, really a testament to the hardworking folks in local government, cities and counties across the state of Minnesota that we're fortunate to have. We all benefit from their work, and often I think it goes unrecognized or doesn't get as much attention as it deserves for the skill and the expertise that those folks bring to their role. So I'm not going to say too much about the report because my colleague Luna will be with us in just a moment to present, but I'd like to hand it over to Julie Tesh at CRPD to give a little introduction to them and their work. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Jake. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to have you all here today. My name is Julie Tesh, President and CEO of the Center for Rural Policy and Development. We were created in 1997 to focus on rural policy. And so we'll take policy issues and bring a rural lens to them. Something I like to say is that we translate rural realities into policy action. And so we do the research. We're not an advocacy organization, but we do provide the research and the foundation for good research. And just like Citizens League, we're nonpartisan, nonprofit, really seeking for the common good. And we've been doing this program now with Citizens League for 5 years, actually. This started during COVID. And it has been a wonderful partnership. And when Jake told me that this was a topic for one of their reports, I'm like, that's perfect, because in our research agenda that we do every 3 years now, this is one of our research topics, actually, is talking about workforce, obviously, but then also attracting workforce to local government. So whether that's city, county, region, but also the civility of it and what is that looking like? So very excited that League of Minnesota Cities and Association of Minnesota Counties are involved in this as well. And we're really hoping that we can build off of this report and do even more so that we can get this word out there more and help. So with that, I will say just quickly, if you're interested in any of our reports, you can go to our website at ruralmn.org, and you can find all of our reports, all of our websites and everything there. So thank you all for being here today, and I'm going to turn it back over to Jake.
Thanks, Julie. Appreciate that. So next up, we are going to do my colleague, Luna Allen Bakarian, is our policy director at Citizens League. She's been with us about a little over a year now. And so this is one of the big projects that Luna got to dive in when she came on board with our organization. She really led a lot of the work, meeting with folks around the state, convening a lot of really important conversations, and digging into all the survey results that we got. And so Luna is going to spend about 15 minutes or so here, kind of giving a high-level overview. As you will see, the report is very detailed. It's 50-some pages, a lot of themes and recommendations that we pulled through, because what became clear is that different communities around the state are looking for and need different things. And so without, I'm not going to go into any more. I'm going to hand it over to Luna, who's going to walk us through a presentation, and then we'll get into a really great panel discussion. So Luna, floor is all yours. Thanks.
Thanks, Jake, and hello, everyone joining virtually or watching later. Hello to you too. I'm Luna. I serve as the policy director on the Citizens League team, and really excited to chat through some of this work with you in limited time. Started my timer. What I want to do, if it'll work, is drop a one-pager into the chat. It may not let me, but we'll see. Maybe it's not going to let me, which is fine. There's a one pager that we will add to our, because I'm saying hosted panelists. Let's see. We have a one pager that kind of high level goes over the report that we can email out, or it might be on the project page that will allow you to see high level some of our findings. You will be able to access, everyone can access the report now. And so one of the things that we appreciate about the format that we ended up with is that you can go to any section of it that makes sense for your work, interest, or jurisdiction and engage with it as you see fit. So let's dive into it. My goal in this time is that you have some good working knowledge of our report as we move into a really dynamic panel conversation that I am very excited to listen to after having spent some time with all of this data over the last 6 to 8 months. So I wanted to start with a note of gratitude just to everybody who made this work come together. So the Association of Minnesota Counties and the League of Minnesota Cities were our partners in this project, helped us reach a lot of jurisdictions statewide, get meetings, step into meetings with be on existing agendas. Just a lot of gratitude to our team at the Citizens League, including our board members and our interns for the support and the shifting that it takes when we're holding a project. Everyone, which may include you who are joining us right now, who took a survey or came to a public listening session or had a meeting or interview with us. And Kim Jackson, our amazing graphic designer, who really helped this report come to life. And then thanks to everyone who collaborates with us for Interconnected so that we can have conversations like these. So CRPD, their work is excellent. Please do check out all of the other reports that they have past and upcoming. And McClung PR, we're really grateful for your partnership. And thanks to all of you for joining today. All right, so my goal in this time is to give you sort of a who, what, when, where, why of the report. As Jake mentioned, it is pretty extensive, and so we will not get to go through even all of the things that are on the slides today. What I've done is highlighted some high-level things that I think will be relevant in the conversation among our panelists, and particularly will highlight some of the urban and rural policy considerations that are needed for certain recommendations. So what we can tell you about the study is that this was a policy project that started early in the fall of 2024, spanned about 6 months, maybe from August to February-ish. We had 2 online surveys, one that was for members of the public to share their thoughts about local government entities and work, and one for people who currently or formerly work or have worked in local government, city, county, etc. We had 3 virtual listening sessions that were publicized through Citizens League manners and at different times of day, different months in the fall, where anyone could sign up and take part in the conversation. Several group meetings that we either joined that were existing or that came together for the express purpose of talking about this inquiry, and one-on-one interviews as well with people who had specific experience or feedback. All in all, we had data that spanned all 4 corners of the state. So about 91% of counties and about 25% of cities in Minnesota. You can see this sort of sidebar over here that has numbers at a glance. And as Jake mentioned, really, really excited to have heard from nearly 1,000 Minnesotans statewide. And what you will see about our work is that almost all of the recommendations come directly from people with lived experience working in local government infrastructure, seeing what is working and what's not. Here's what I will say about the outcomes. So we at first approached the report and thought that we might have sort of clear, here are the main challenges, here are the main opportunities, and here's what we'd recommend. But what came forward as we had more and more conversations is that there were overarching themes that really could be woven throughout any of the conversations that we had that were just there. So we distilled these 3 key themes. 7 relevant topics sort of arose as, again, general consensus of what we were hearing from folks over and over. And so within those topic areas, we identified the challenges that people brought up, opportunities or novel ideas, things that people are trying that are working well, as well as recommendations, as I mentioned, many of which have come directly from the feedback we received, and we ended up with 36. We have a note about our recommendations in the report that, of course, recommendations, this is the purpose of today's conversation, cannot be one size fits all, and that's one of the major themes that came out of this report. But we are excited to have such a large and diverse slate of opportunities for policy and other innovation. All right, key themes. I put, these are me using icons, not our graphic designer. So when I say thanks to the graphic designer, it's because this is the extent of my graphics knowledge. But I put these 2 analogies here before we talk about the key themes, because the idea might be that if we're looking at a map and we stop along the way, the themes are just embedded in the route to start. Also, this UFO, beaming down are the key themes, even though there are specificities within them. So these are things we want you to keep in mind as an overarching background as we talk about all the nuances for different local government entities. The first is that local governments are distinct, and this may seem simple and like common sense, but it really is at the root of a lot of where we get into sticky issues, particularly when it comes to policy creation, mandates, compliance, etc. Local governments have very different constituencies, challenges they're facing, budgets. We talked to folks who said we have a very healthy city financially, but we have a low levy. And so our city infrastructure is not very wealthy. And so then the services that we're expected to provide are not operating with a budget that allows for it. Some local governments run municipal cemeteries, which I learned more about, versus just working with associations that run them. There's so many distinct differences that, again, we can't account for all differences in one policy or recommendation, but we have to keep it in mind. So as one participant shared, there's no cookie cutter way. The second key theme is that local governments are made up of people, and people experience social, political, and cultural shifts. And so the context and the moment that we are in now impacts the people who make up our local governments and thusly make up the work that impacts all other constituents. And that's a cycle that goes both ways. And so we have to find a balance of relying on historical and institutional knowledge and understanding that the way that we have always done things may not always be the way we're going to need to continue to do it moving forward. And finally, resources matter. Truly, resources matter. The ways in which cities and counties get resources, what they are balancing in their budgets, right? Maybe huge natural reserves that are being cared for, but the whole state uses them, but it's just in one local jurisdiction. All of these types of challenges that really do come down to resources. Some of the entities that said we're really not having too much trouble attracting or retaining a workforce had ample resources to be able to be competitive and keep their workforce. And so that's a real challenge that we have to keep top of mind when we're thinking about local government public service. All right, here are our relevant topics. As I mentioned, these slides will be text heavy. I'm just going to go through a couple points in each section that I think will be relevant for the conversation that we're going to hear just shortly. But know that there are many more in the report, which you can view later, download in its entirety, and we hope you do. So first off, we have recruitment. So all sizes of governments are facing recruitment challenges. That's nationwide, but certainly Minnesota's local governments have been in keeping with national trends where there was a huge dip and then a little bit of a pickup, but we're not seeing the same surge, and there are real questions and concerns about pipeline long-term for filling roles in local government. Particularly technical roles or roles that require certain training or credentials are seeing major dips. Some of what we heard are challenges are restrictions on remote and hybrid work. The job candidates are looking for that across many different sectors. It's coming up. And we really did hear about competition amongst neighboring jurisdictions. That will come up a lot in several of our relevant topics and is something hopefully we can discuss today. Some opportunities definitely include high school recruitment, paid college internships, and partnerships that allow early career or young learners to understand what roles exist in local government. And some recommendations might be adopting flexibility in job descriptions or in the way the work is done as works. Again, know that we're speeding through. Salary and benefits, as I mentioned, resources matter. Compensation was noted to us in many survey responses, many conversations, but there wasn't consensus about how salary and benefits in local government compare to other sectors, particularly the private sector, which is interesting because that maybe is a little bit of a noted shift from days of like the benefits can't be beat. We were hearing sort of a mix. So challenges again include feelings of poaching from one local government to another. We heard that there are neighboring districts that are able to offer up to $8 an hour more for someone to add a commute that's drivable. And so that's a very real challenge for entities that can't compete with that. Opportunities are training on the job for certification, advancement, and professional development. Certainly that comes with risk about onboarding folks who then leave for said neighboring jurisdictions. But all different types of training opportunities are seen as a benefit that's on par with salary. And a recommendation might be providing thorough and regular education for employees about the existing benefits and considering opportunities to create new benefits. Are there things that are specific to role? Are there folks who really do need to be physically in the office at all times, right? They're staffing City Hall, for example. What are the benefit opportunities that maybe can be creatively made? Training is twofold. That's training for folks entering local government service. What are trainings that are needed for the workforce, but also training that exists for employees once they are in local government service. So challenges, I mentioned before, in-house training bears risk of losing candidates after certification is complete, depending on what type of contract or mandate you have about timeline. Opportunities, trainings from association groups. So one of the things that we found is that many members of jurisdictions really appreciate the robust opportunities that are offered by association groups and networks, and that provides an opportunity for many folks to come together and train. And a recommendation to that end is to require city and county orientations for elected and hired employees. I'll speak a little bit about that in a minute. Sorry for my speed, everyone. I'm watching my clock. Turnover and retention was highlighted as a real worry because of the loss of some employees who have just rich historical and institutional knowledge, and there being sort of a scramble to try and fill roles that really are like 3 roles in one and then some. But also we heard from a number of folks that told us about how turnover offered sort of a re-up within the jurisdiction that allowed for fresh ideas. So again, what we need to be prepared for at the local level is combating burnout, particularly, I mentioned social, political, and cultural impacts in the last 5 years in particular, in human service, public facing roles in government, right? Burnout is top tier. That's contributing to a lot of turnover, but also a lack of succession planning. And so what are ways, opportunities to use interviews along the path of a person's career as well as exit interviews to really have a grounded understanding of all that our local government employees do and what needs to be fulfilled after their departure. And begin conversations early about transition plans, however, with the caveat that that is not meant to be a pushing people out or an ageist solution, but just that conversations are out in the open with everyone about how do we make sure that this is sustainable long term? What are folks going to need coming into that role in the future? Silos of administrative and elected employees within local governments is something that came up just in terms of frustrations about misunderstanding. So if there's misinformation or misunderstanding about ability to be partisan, what certain roles do, how collaboration will work, it can lead to tension, especially when the elected bodies turn over and folks on the admin side may not be. So some opportunities are to establish work groups for collaboration on topics such as restructuring or salary, and do opportunities for shadowing, so that, you know, electeds and admin side employees can shadow each other, see the nature of the work a little bit more, and deepen that understanding. We did hear from several people who said, I wish that we were not using partisan endorsement in local government elections, which is interesting and a consideration, and probably could be its own webinar altogether. And public understanding and civic education is twofold. A lack of understanding specifically about local government roles and work in the general public, but also among young people, was highlighted. So in general, constituents not understanding the work of local government employees leads to confusion and frustration and outright hostility that contributes to the burnout I mentioned earlier. And also young people don't necessarily, like, are they learning? This is a question that came up in conversations. Do they know that they could pursue a career field that they were already interested in for their local government, right? Masonry, business, accounting, media. So opportunities are some intentional partnerships with schools and internships, which I hope we hear from some of our panelists about, to encourage youth participation in local government, including on boards and commissions, and advocate for broader civics education in general for our population. Finally, I mentioned association groups and networks. Networks of support were mentioned by many local government employees as a way that they are able to find good advice, a way to boost morale, practical skills, peer relationship building, mentorship, and shared narrative building. And so some of the opportunities and recommendations around network opportunities are to have sliding scale options for drop-in education sessions or for dues for different city and county entities of different sizes, to promote opportunities for advocacy days or days on the Hill, which I know our partner association groups bring together, and find more ways that local government employees can be with one another. All right, those were the, the relevant topics really fast. You can see a few quotes here from our report, really underscoring how many thousands and thousands of dedicated Minnesota local government public service employees we have and are lucky to have. And so though there are challenges that exist, we did feel hopeful completing the project and the report for all of the work that is to come and all the people who really are so passionate about making sure that their local governments can operate well for Minnesotans all around the state. Thanks again for joining. You can view the full report at citizensleague.org/public service. And if you have feedback, questions, ideas, want to request a presentation, want to do a different project, you can contact policy@citizensleague.org. And so after many words from me, I'm so excited for this panel conversation, all because I'm going to be with you, like listening to how even more extensions of how this work operates in real life. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian McClung, CEO of McClung PR, who has a many decades long career at the intersection of media and PR and comms and politics, and is a longtime friend and supporter of the Citizens League, to get our panel started. Brian, over to you.
Hey, thanks so much, Luna. That was a fantastic presentation and overview. And like you expressed, there's a lot more to it. So I do want to invite everybody, look in the chat. You can download that 2-page summary, but download the full report as well, and take a look at that. And of course, if you have an organization or that you're involved in or know of a good place where this would be a great conversation, reach out to the Citizens League. I'm sure they'd be happy to come and speak and present or do something like this for your group. And so we really invite you to do that. So I'm going to ask all of our panelists to turn on their cameras at this time. We have a fantastic panel for this conversation. And as Luna and I think Jake and Julie said at the beginning, we want all of you who are here online with us today to be part of this conversation. So the chat is your opportunity to talk to one another in the chat, to share questions. I'll be trying to track that, and we'll get those pinged to me as well. And I'll raise those in a conversation here with our panelists. But I'm going to do a quick bio for each of our 5 panelists. Then we're going to jump right into this conversation because we've got a lot to talk about from this report. So I'm going to start with Brenda Johnson. Brenda is the Executive Director of the Southeastern Minnesota League of Municipalities, where she supports collaboration and advocacy among local governments across the region. And Brenda previously served on the Chatfield City Council, bringing firsthand experience in small town governance to her leadership role. We also have with us Jessica Seibert. Jessica serves as Manager of Learning and Member Programs at the Association of Minnesota Counties. We talked about AMC was a big part of this research effort. In that role, she develops training and engagement opportunities for county officials statewide. Prior to this job, she was county administrator for Aitkin County. She is also a board member for the Center for Rural Policy and Development. We have Jack Swanson. Jack is a longtime Roseau County Commissioner and a respected voice in Minnesota County government. He's a past president of the Association of Minnesota Counties, and he currently serves on the AMC Futures Task Force, which is helping shape the future of local public service. We have Latoya Turk. Latoya is the Director of Community Prevention, Health, and Safety for the City of Brooklyn Center, where she leads innovative approaches to violence prevention and community well-being. Latoya's work centers on building trust and safety through public health and community-led strategies. And last, we have Evan Vogel. Evan is the city administrator for Cambridge, Minnesota, where he oversees daily operations and long-term planning for the city of Cambridge. He has a background in public administration, brings a solutions-focused approach to local government leadership, and Evan is a member of the League of Minnesota Cities Board of Directors. So thank you all for joining. Again, great group, and really appreciate you here today. And I'm really just going to open up these questions to all of you. So again, I encourage you all, don't be shy. Everybody turn off your mute so you're ready to go, and just have a lively conversation here for the folks that are dialed in. And, you know, as I think about it, local government is really where democracy meets daily life. And local government is the place of problem solving and innovation. So as you think about that, you know, meeting people where they are and those innovative roles, what are some of the ways that local government's innovating to start off with on this workforce challenge? As we think about recruitment and retention, what are some of the things that you see local government doing to, you know, meet that challenge of attracting and retaining talent, you know, especially in specialized roles or especially in rural settings? I'm just curious to get some thoughts and ideas on what you see starting to be some innovative techniques in that area.
Jess knows that I'm not shy, so I'll start. So for us, geography is a major issue as one of the northernmost counties in the United States, in the continental United States. And so COVID kind of forced us in this direction, but I think innovation for us largely involved working remotely, which had never happened for us before COVID. And so, and we've continued to adopt that. And so for us, that's been a major innovation that we had never considered previous to COVID.
Excellent.
I would say that's true way down here in southern Minnesota too. I'm over in southeast corner, Levin County area, and our cities use all the traditional things like their city website. They especially appreciate the LMC's website where they can announce openings, and they work with the professional organizations throughout the state to include the city openings there. And they're reaching out and using LinkedIn now, which is also good because all those people who are online, that's probably one of the first places they look to. But you're right, working remotely, at least part of the time, if not all the time, is a big draw.
I think Brenda brings up a good point when you mentioned technology. That is not something that counties always did necessarily. It wasn't too long ago that all of the job ads were still being put in the local newspaper. So I think using technology, not just to use things like LinkedIn and all of the different websites to post a job, but also using technology to tell the story of the county. Again, something not necessarily counties or cities have always done a good job with, but we have to market ourselves more than we ever have. So there's some counties doing some very creative videos. Shout out to Meeker County, who has one of my favorite employee recruitment videos on their website you can check out. Also, shout out to Aitkin County, who has started doing podcasts each week called Coffee with the County. You can check it out on their website, but all in an effort to educate and highlight the good mission-driven work that counties do. So some creative things there.
Yeah, that's great. We've got a question in the chat from Emily Wick, and she's curious to get your thoughts on the changing views on remote work. And I think, you all mentioned that as part of innovating and attracting a workforce. Of course, there's that balancing act between remote work and building culture and having the people, together in an office sometimes. So I'm curious for all of you how you've experienced that over these last few years. How the increase in remote work has benefited your city or county, but also how you still maintain that connection, because we know working in government is about that public service and that heart for your community. And I wonder if that's harder to develop or cultivate in a remote setting. So interested to get thoughts about how those kind of remote work issues come in where you are.
Well,
Most of our employees, I'm sorry, Evan, you go ahead.
all I was going to say is I really commend Jack and Brenda on their work to facilitate that remote work policy and to enable that type of thing. I find myself more constrained by that and view that as a challenge as we look to attract and retain talent. Because we're a smaller organization. And so even our city hall staff, we have people that have an office that may back up some of the folks that are working up front. And so I can't have that person working from home with a regular schedule, because when somebody goes on lunch, if they have a sick day or something like that, we find ourselves unable to backfill some of that. And so that is an area that certainly I think workforce is looking for. That is not always easy. And then politically, it can be a little hazardous as well, because like you said, we're very front facing and we have to have access points for the public. I certainly love seeing efforts going in that direction to be enabling that more often.
To Evan's point, most of our employees choose not to work remotely. The ones that do primarily are social workers, and they can do 3 days a week remote if they choose. But they're on the road most of the time. To Evan's other point, most of our employees at the county level can't work remotely because it's very difficult to plow snow from home. So I'll just say that although it's available, it's only in limited places.
Agreed. We have, city staff in cities of all sizes. Our membership goes from cities such as Rochester all the way down to Myrtle, which is only 20 residents. And so the range of being able to work remotely it really varies. In Chatfield, I still live in Chatfield, and I probably will for the rest of my days. We're a city of around 3,000. So some of our staff can work remotely for at least part of the time, but you still have to have that in-office group that is there for much of the time, because they're the ones who are at the city clerk's counter answering the questions directly. And it doesn't always work to have a phone call. And plus your public works department and your park and rec department, those are hands-on things. So.
Maybe LaToya, maybe you could share from your perspective in that role of health and safety and well-being in a community. what are some of the ways that you can interact remotely, or is that mostly a role that you find with your employees and your team there, that's more of a hands-on in-person role, or what's the balance from your perspective?
Yeah, thank you, Brian. As you heard, there are just some positions that we cannot operate remotely, that they are, do need to be present for those roles. But for, say, our clerks or our folks who are in admin up front, we do cross training so that we can allow for that healthy balance of being able to have a set amount of days. Our staff were allowed 2 days a week to work remotely, and then we also have flex opportunities. So an example would be our community engagement team, who might be 3 days a week here until 9 o'clock because of engagements. So then they're afforded to come in later in the day for that. But we try to allow that as a perk with working in the city, because we are a smaller jurisdiction and we're sandwiched between two major cities who our staff could go right up the street and get paid significantly more for the same role. So it has allowed us to be able to retain a younger workforce and be able to fill some of those gaps on the specialized roles that we need here in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And Brian, we
Yeah.
use flexible hours as well when that can work. But I want to go back to the first question and ask, maybe Jess would jump in on this. When you talk about innovation at the county level, it may be not true in city, but at county, innovation is extremely difficult because of what we are mandated to do. And so essentially, we can only innovate when we're allowed to innovate. And I guess I would ask Jess to jump in on that one.
I hear what you're saying there, Jack, too. It is almost trying to find ways to be more efficient versus innovative, trying to do more with less, find ways to use the resources you have. But yes, it is hard to be creative when you're limited in what you're required to do. I did like something that Crystal's put in the chat here is there a possibility that maybe people like not having to come into the courthouse? And I think that's a good point, especially in counties like Lake and Aitkin and Itasca, where when you travel north to south, you could be on the road an hour and a half to 2 hours to get from north to south. So I think we can't assume that everybody wants that face-to-face conversation. Now, certainly a lot of people do prefer that, but I think counties realize that even if folks aren't super excited about losing the face-to-face, they realize it's a reality that we live in. And if we want to find the employees, if we want to have flexibility, which the employees are demanding, even if you're not super excited about it, you have to do it to be competitive. And I think that's why most counties have hybrid schedules. So even if you have a position that can't always work from home, if that person can take a day because something comes up at home and they need the flexibility to work out of their home office, that exists. But it's also about being very clear with your employees when they're hired, what jobs can be done remotely and what jobs cannot. You just have to be clear from the start. I mean, a sheriff's deputy knows that they're not going to do their job from home. So it's just sometimes it's a field you choose to go into.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, and a lot of these roles are directly with the public and in person, and that's how that works. So those roles all the way through the pandemic, even when some folks were working from home, were still in person and supporting public service that way. There's an interesting question here that I want to raise from the chat, and the idea of public perception and how maybe public perception has changed. So this person mentioned the idea of being a public servant, and we may have lost some of that, and there's a negative perception of working for government. And so I think that was something that came through in the conversation and in the report about civic education and understanding the roles of local government and how that comes together. So I'm curious to get all of your thoughts about whether you feel like that is the case in your experience. Has some of the past positive glow of being a public servant, have we lost some of that? why? What do we think has happened overall in society? And what are some of the things that you think would help going forward as we, educate the next generation or think about recruiting a future generation into public service? How do we bring back some of that positive glow that I think we used to have?
I think one of the big things here is that public service has been shamed in a lot of ways. And I think that really boils down to what you see at the federal level and what you see at the state level in terms of a decline in civility. And that's pretty straightforward. That could be its own webinar and what have you. But I think we're seeing our leaders choose to act in a way that is unbecoming a lot of the time. And so that reflection creates this image of government. And I was just speaking with a group of high school students last week about this exact thing. Counties, I think, are a little different because so much funding comes from the state or the county level or the federal level, excuse me. But I think the biggest thing that has made the job more challenging is the decline in the political civility of everything. When you think about local government, 90% of my staff lives somewhere in the community that they're working in here, and 70% of them probably were born and raised here. These are your neighbors, these are your friends, these are your colleagues, and making sure we're telling that story and talking about the ability to have jobs that fit any interest. You want to be a heavy equipment mechanic, there are ways that we can make local government work relatable. And I think it's a good time to start to double down and try and tell that story.
I think that's what I mentioned earlier. I 100% agree, Evan. We have to be, people don't even know, especially in a large city or a county, all the different types of jobs that exist, from accountants to deputies to truck drivers to administration. I mean, pretty much any field of study is housed within a county, and we need to talk to kids about that, talk to folks. And again, what do we do? These are the everyday things, because we're behind the scenes helping government run. We haven't been good about announcing, look at this great work the recorder's office is doing to make sure that all of your documents will be here 100 years from now. It's not necessarily always glamorous work. So we definitely have to keep telling the city and county story and try to drown out some of that negative noise that you were talking about.
Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. For the last significant period of time, we've done a really good job being in touch with our communities and saying, we don't have enough people working in manufacturing. Here, local community college, we need you to step up this tech ed program. We need you to step up. And in that entire time, we have seen a decline in wastewater operators, and we've seen a decline in building officials, and we've seen a decline in city planners, but we haven't told that story. And now we find ourselves behind the 8 ball on how do we re-engage? How do we get people back into that part of the conversation?
I see two sides to this, or two parts to this. Part of it is again what was initially popped up as a phrase called public perception, and then it's the civic engagement, and then it's the potential employee engagement. So there's really multiple parts to this. I'll touch on the public perception and the civic engagement and those in different questions. But right now it seemed to me that the public perception may be the first place to start. So how do we get the public to better understand the roles and responsibilities of public servants? A lot of people, they don't really interact with City Hall at all during the whole time they live in their community, other than to pay the property tax. That's it. And so if we want to have them understand that there are real people who work for the city, who are doing good things for you and your family and your well-being, it's almost like that song, Getting to Know You. We have to help our residents get to know who is that at City Hall. What are those people doing? So I'm toying with the idea of sharing with the Southeast League membership. So we'll maybe be the guinea pig on this. Working with our local media on featuring a day in the life of, and have it be an official, a local government official, telling what they do, who they are even, and why they do it, that type of thing. if we could get that out in some forms of media, be a newspaper at the local level, maybe even a little blurb at one of the, on a TV show or something, or the local access channel, something like that. Put it on the city website for sure. Put it in the city newsletter for sure. Even in the front entry to the city hall, have a brand new bulletin board that highlights just in paper form. Look at who got highlighted and what they do and who they are, that sort of thing. You need to celebrate those successes of your staff and your city through any avenue you can, because there's going to be a counterflow of not so nice things. And that's the hard part, I think, for a lot of communities, is they feel like, well, we don't want to brag. Well, you kind of have to. You got to toot your own horn. And you know what? I tell my cities, you got a pretty nice horn to toot. So just do it, because you have a great story to tell. And that is, I think, a key thing to deal with that first public perception.
I like that. Thank you. I wanted to, get back to one part of the report, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit in the conversation, but I want to go a little deeper around retention and specifically around burnout. And that was a phrase that came out in the report, and it was, highlighted in there. And so want to get your thoughts about what you see being done to combat burnout in city and county, the city and county workforce, and especially in those kind of high stress areas, social work, emergency services, some of that. And LaToya, maybe you can start us off on that, since I think you're probably closest to it. But we know these are really difficult jobs and very high stress jobs sometimes. And what is being done, or what can be done to help people kind of navigate that part of their careers?
I think for us, what we're seeing is being very intentional about providing those training opportunities, one as an entire organization on well-being, and then also being very intentional about modeling. So as leaders, how are we modeling a healthy work-life balance, whether it is managing our calendars, our time off, being able to delegate so that we're not taking on too many roles, and then also honoring those requests that I just need to step away, or I don't have the capacity. Also, we're really big on collaborating across department lines, and so that the ownership of a project does not fall on one department, that we all have a shared role and responsibility, which then allows us to produce a better product with multiple different lenses and scopes on the outcome. So we have been very intentional about making sure that we do not put a project or an initiative solely on one person, one entity, that we share the load. And then also utilizing our wellness committees, and then outside stakeholders who have a lens on health and wellness with community partners.
Excellent.
I would, if I could jump in, I would say that
Please.
what you describe as burnout in my county probably is most seen in our social services department, and more specifically in child protection. And so I think what they try to do within that agency is support one another. But those are difficult jobs. I mean, Jess knows those are hard jobs. And I'm not sure how you avoid burnout, particularly in child protection, because we see that a lot.
A multi-pronged approach. It's making sure folks have the training and education that they need to be able to be successful in their jobs. It's creating a culture where you can be open about the struggles that you're having, which I think is something that counties are really dialed into right now. And that starts with, helping leadership understand how to approach making resources like EAP available. And again, creating the culture where it's not frowned upon to actually use them. There can be fun things like, I know in Aitkin County, they created a Zen Den. It was this room that they outfitted with comfortable seating. And if you just needed a minute, or you needed to take your 15-minute break, you could go to the Zen Den and just be quiet for a moment and take a break. So, and then of course, all of the wellness programs, public health staff is great about helping the agency come up with ideas for, different wellness programs. So, and just listening, just being there for staff.
I think that's it. A lot of the time we talk about staff like their job description, and sometimes we ignore that they're people. And that's a problem. I think Latoya hit the nail on the head that talking about their benefits and their work-life balance and what their expectations are in terms of using their benefits and accessing this help and supports that exist is critically important, because we have to take care of our staff, our employees as people before we can expect them to do a good job. It's like the concept of expecting a hungry kid at school to pay attention. It's not going to happen. They have to have certain needs met ahead of time. I think appreciation is a big component of that, and making sure that you're having good open processes to ask them how they're doing and accept feedback, particularly in the Cambridge Police Department. We have instituted a lot of good practices to help with mental health supports and things like that, so that when help is needed, we don't have this assumption that somebody is broken, but that they're experiencing something, they need some help, and there's a process to get them help, so we can make sure that they are okay, which oftentimes leads to them being ready and able to come back and do a great job for us.
Excellent. I want to bring in another question from the chat here. You might have seen Heather Arndt. Her question is, do you feel the challenges in getting and keeping local government employees is reflective of what people feel about job opportunities in their county or community? So I think my interpretation is to, in part, you all are not just competing with other local units of government for employees, you're competing with all of the employers in your community. And so how does that all come together? How do the workforce opportunities more broadly where you are located, how does that impact keeping and bringing in local government employees? So just curious your thoughts. I'm also curious your thoughts on the poaching issue that came up here too, and that I think Latoya mentioned too, right? You're right near these other, big communities that might be able to pay more or have other things. So maybe this is just a broad question about attracting and retaining employees and kind of the competitive nature of workforce in general, and what your cities and counties might be doing in that regard.
So if I could start, geography in this case is a benefit for us because we're so far away from every other entity except a couple of cities in our county that we don't get poached very often. But I will say that our two major employers are Polaris Industries in Roseau and Marvin Windows in Warroad. Together, they employ about 4,000 people. They face the same issue that's been raised here, in that kids growing up here see those as floor factory jobs. They don't understand the gamut of jobs that are available at either one of those two private employers. So they're battling the same thing we're battling in trying to help kids understand that there are a variety of jobs available for them at those manufacturing facilities.
And the poaching is absolutely a reality for counties and cities. I can say counties don't like to do that because we are all one big family and we know what happens to that county when that employee comes. But the reality is, when you're in need of a position and somebody trained wants to come, most counties and cities aren't going to say no. However, I think we do have those conversations on, especially the smaller counties, maybe with a little less resources. What besides money can be offered to make your county or city attractive? And I think that's something we can thank our younger workforce for. Is there are things with the flexibility, with different wellness programs, autonomy over your position, being involved in more conversations, being mission focused, that can help our work look attractive other than just the dollars. With that said, I do know counties over the last 3 years have had to make substantial strides in being more competitive with their salaries. That has been difficult because, again, counties were all competing. One county does a salary survey, the next person that uses them as a comparable is now having to up their game. So that's not a good long-term solution. But in an effort to be competitive with private market, which counties can probably never pay private market. We'll never necessarily be able to pay our engineers what a private engineer can make, just because you know, it's our citizens that pay our paychecks. But considerable strides have been made, and we have seen the difference in that.
Down here in Southeast Minnesota, one of our major employers is Mayo Clinic. And we love Mayo Clinic. Mayo Clinic is good for Southeast Minnesota and all of Minnesota. However, if you live within 30 miles of Mayo Clinic, they're a major competitor for talent. So how does Chatfield, and I serve like over 80 cities, but I live in Chatfield. And it's a good example in the sense that it's kind of a typical Southeast Minnesota city. So we are less than 30 miles from Mayo. And so how do we keep people or attract people to work in the city government here? Well, part of it is that we can basically make the claim that you won't have hardly any commute if you work for City of Chatfield. You won't have those parking issues. You won't have to pay for parking. You can go home for lunch. You can be at the ball field in the afternoon for part of your afternoon to see your kids play. Those are some lifestyle things that you cannot get in other types of employment, not even at Mayo Clinic. Now, working from home, Mayo offers that still to a certain degree, but they're pulling back on that. Well, we can actually offer, some of that work from home, but we can also offer that even if you're going into the office, you are still so close to everything in your family, such as going home for lunch, going to see your kids at the ballpark, that it will help to fill in those gaps. As far as pay, yes, we do the pay surveys to make sure that we're at least competitive with the neighboring communities, because the poaching thing is real. But for small cities in particular, your city administrator or clerk may get enticed to move to a larger city for their employment, just because larger cities can often afford to pay more. And there's sort of a stepping up for those folks that you move from city to city every 3, 4, 5 years. Our city administrator, who is recently retired, and we have a new city administrator who's also wonderful. How did we keep our city administrator for 30 years when we have all this competition around us? We paid attention to what cities around us were looking for, knowing that, oh, our city administrator is going to be just a prime target for that. And we'd make sure that that person was happy. We went and talked to that person and say, how are you doing? Are you happy? What do you need? We just made it really out there in the open that we know this person is attractive and we value them and we want them to stay. How do we make that happen? And it worked for 30 years. I think that was a great success. We're going to keep on doing that with our new city administrator, who's also wonderful. So I think it's communication. It's being really flat out bold about the whole thing and saying, we want to talk about this.
I think as public agencies, cities or counties are looking to attract and I will not go out and poach a neighboring cities or counties employee, but if they apply to an open job that we have, that's a different situation. And so as organizations think about how do we attract, how do we retain talent, our solution has been to lean into initiatives that we've titled our employer of choice initiatives. And this is not an either or proposition. It's got to be a both and proposition. So where we're looking at, we added an 8-week paid parental leave 3 years ago, and that program has been wildly successful. We look at vacation balances in those areas that we do have discretion. Pay matters, and pay matters too, and making sure that you may not be creating a whole new market, but that you're competitive within the market. If you get those factors, the pay and benefit piece together, and then you can start to tell a story about connecting the work that each member of your staff does to the strategic vision and priorities of your organization. That's why people get in public service a lot of the time. What am I contributing to my community? And we have the Center for Rural Policy and Development hosting this panel. I would guess if you go to any rural community in Minnesota, you're going to hear the word community more than anything else. And it's because there's a strong sense of an identity with your community. And if somebody can help contribute to that, I think that's a very compelling thing that local governments have. And we need to be talking about that.
Mhm.
They make a
One of
very
the, oh, go ahead, Latoya.
and say you make a very good point of appealing. We have a model that Brooklyn Center is a place where you can live, work, and play, and so it attracts folks who may have families that they are looking to have that small town feel in their work environment, and also diversifying our workforce. Representation matters. We're one of the most diverse cities in the state, and so when you are able to see yourself in a role and in a position that's actually impacting your city, your community, it's more lucrative to want to be a part of it. So creating champions internally and externally to be those voices of, hey, why would you want to work here?
Yeah, and so the next thing
Yeah,
that I want
could
to
I,
talk
Brian,
about, oh, go ahead, Jack.
I'm sorry. I wanted to reflect on something Evan said. So pay does matter. And when you're in a public business, like a county or like a city, you got essentially a fixed pay scale. And that's the greatest frustration I hear from our employees is, here's as much as I can make other than a cost of living increase. We can't do what privates do. And that is a frustrating issue for certainly for my county employees, or some of them, because they are now, after 7 years, they're at the top, and the only thing they're going to get is a cost of living increase. They can go to a private, and that's not the case. And so I think, as Evan said, pay matters. There's no question about that. And when, for example, in my case, and when Polaris or Marvin raises their salaries, which they've done in order to try to attract employees, everybody else has to do the same. And counties don't react as quickly as, let's say, Subway or the local grocery store or whatever.
Yeah, and this, kind of leads into what I want to talk about next. One of the, recommendations or opportunities in the report was around workforce training. And so I wanted to ask you all about kind of what are some of the training opportunities, or, what are the ways to help city and county employees kind of gain the skills they need to continue in their careers and to have that ongoing growth, and also to meet evolving community needs. So maybe talk to us a little bit about, and I think this is also an area that the public or community doesn't know about as broadly, that there are these opportunities for growth and training that exists within government. So I want to get your thoughts and background about what you see happening there.
League of Minnesota Cities has been a leader for taking on the training aspect, and they may hire out to government training services, things like that, to bring it in to LMC, but it's still through the LMC that they're getting training for clerks, finance officers, administrators, and there are organizations, and elected officials too, obviously, for the newly elected and for the new mayors. But there's also those statewide organizations that offer training, like the Minnesota Clerks and Finance Officers. For some key roles in the city, there are state agencies that have training, the Department of Health, MPCA, and those are usually offered through community colleges, things like that. But they're not always evenly distributed throughout the state. So in southern Minnesota, we saw a shortage, and somebody else may have already mentioned this, of water and wastewater operators. So that's what the Southeast League is about, is dealing with regional issues. And we found this is not just a regional issue, it was for all of southern Minnesota. So it was just the location of the training. So we talked to Riverland Community College, which is sort of right in the middle of southern Minnesota. So in this case, we went beyond our 11 county area, and we decided to serve all of southern Minnesota with this training initiative. And Riverland is great about offering other types of customized training for city needs. We went to the Capitol and got a state appropriation to have those programs created to be offered by Riverland, and we're hoping to see those programs start up this fall. So when you come to Minnesota, or anywhere in Minnesota, this is good for everybody in Minnesota, because frankly, when you have more operators in southern Minnesota, we know that there's poaching, we know that there's people moving around. And so we're helping all of Minnesota with having this training by creating a larger pool. So when you flush, in Minnesota, say thank you, Southeast Minnesota cities, for making that pool bigger.
I think that's something that the League and Association of Minnesota Counties has done well for many years, probably decades. There's not a county recorder or county auditor four-year degree program that you can go get. So much of what county folks learn is on the job. And there's a wide variety of topics that have to be learned. And so AMC and LMC and various nonprofits, they're really good about bringing in relevant speakers, relevant topics, helping bring that education to counties and cities. But the really cool thing, and this is an opportunity, the really cool thing about counties is you can start in one department. And in the smaller counties, Aitkin County and Roseau, oftentimes there's departments of two people. You know, the recorder's office, it's two people and a supervisor. The auditor's office, two people and a supervisor. So there's not a lot of progression or career, not a long career path in that department. But what's cool is you can start in one department and learn what all of the others do. And your career path can be mapped out among 5 different departments if you want. You know, for instance, you could start in the license center and take a job as a county assessor, because once you're in and you learn where your skill sets are the best fit. So that, I think, is a real opportunity for county leadership and city leadership, is to grow your talent from within. And I know many counties, probably all of them, have a program that will help pay for college credits if that is the type of training that is needed, or sending to AMC trainings to get the training that is needed. But I think rather than looking from the outside, a lot of times counties are trying to grow and invest in that professional development from the inside.
So related to trainings, if I could, Brian, at one point in time, trainings were in person, and it was difficult for somebody in Roseau County to travel 350 miles to the cities for a training. But because of technology, that training is now much, much more accessible. And MCIT and LMCIT and AMC and the League of Cities, I just commend them for offering these things in a way that our employees can actually access those trainings, and they are, and it's a good thing.
Excellent. I want to bring in a question that's in our chat here from Diane Blake. And Diane asked, could you describe some of the strategies used to recruit and retain people of color in public-facing positions? So I want to open that up to the group, about focused on that ensuring diversity and you know, I think, like we were talking about earlier, you know, having that representation. So when people in your county or in your city see themselves in the positions in city and county government.
I think it's working with, I'm sorry, working with all of the resources. Every county looks much different, but even in a county in northern Minnesota, like Aitkin County, we had a high population of Native Americans. So having and developing those relationships with the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe, making sure that they always know of our job openings and creating that relationship with them is just one way that we could do that even in a county that size.
Southeast League is working with Winona State University. Hopefully this fall, or by this fall, we will be pairing up. It's not really a mentorship or an internship, but it's more of a day-long pairing, maybe or 2 days if they really want to, of students with people who work in cities in different roles. And we're hoping to get a very diverse range of students. We're not trying to just pick. We want to pick the folks who are interested. And if someone is a person of color, bring them in, please, because we would appreciate that very much. So biology student, pair them up with a wellhead protection staff person, soil sampling in the wellhead area. I talked to a biology student. She was just amazed that the cities do this. And I also think it'd be great for biology and engineering students to pair up with the wastewater operators. City finance officers could work with accounting, finance. There are city arborists. Now, any natural sciences student is going to be stunned, to find out that there are city arborists, because we have urban forests and that kind of a thing. The best part of this is that I think it would be a great opportunity, not only for cities to show off, these are some of the many, many, many things we do for our community. It will be a great way to inform younger folks of the broad range of activities of environmental protection and you name it that cities do that people are not aware of. So my goal as director for the Southeast League is to get this out in the media. I think that the rest of the world of all ages in our area needs to know about this. I think it'd be great for not only WSU, but for cities in the region. And that will hopefully be another way to recruit more people to be interested in careers at cities.
And I think you're absolutely correct. When we have to get the word out, there's such a diverse outreach opportunity when we're looking at recruiting representation. But there's our HBCUs that where there is a wealth of qualified candidates that are there. Also diversifying our recruitment opportunities at different outreach and community-based recruitment fairs, being in those spaces. Also promoting the professional development with the mentorships and the internships and being very intentional about that, but also making sure that we support a culturally safe workplace. And so whether we are recognizing different cultural months and events that are happening and welcoming those into the space, that will help us be able to attract a more diverse work pool.
Excellent. You know, Latoya, you mentioned mentorships, and that's something we haven't talked about too much yet. And so I wanted to get into that. That is something that came up in the report as, you know, an opportunity or, you know, an area to focus on. So wanted to learn more about, you know, mentorships that cities and counties might be doing or that you're hearing about, you know, as a way to, again, elevate people, train them, bring them into these professions. Curious to learn more about that that mentorship piece.
Yeah, that's more of a long-term strategy for us. The fruit that will bear from that will probably be 2 or 3 years down the road because we start early, and so we'll bring young folks in their junior and senior year of high school and introduce them through youth on boards or summer internship programs where they're working in our park and recs and really helping them understand in totality the role of city staff, what we do, and giving them a roundabout on different departments, whether they start in public works, they go to recreation, and then they come over to Office of Community Prevention, Health and Safety, and maybe even our BCPD and fire department. And so really giving them a 360 view of being a public servant with the hopes that they will continue to come back to us or encourage their peers in their community to retain employment opportunities.
I think part of the mentorship thing too is getting local government kind of comfortable with the idea of doing internships and mentorships. I think to some of them, they view that as, oh my gosh, we're already so busy. How do we take on this additional task? And so that's why I'm thinking that it's not a bad strategy with WSU to work on, let's start with just a day or two and give everybody a little taste of it. And hopefully there'll be some that say, that was marvelous. Let's do more. Let's maybe think about an intern. But they need that to have that little toe in the water time to figure out, oh, well, this could be a good thing. And it's not necessarily going to be a drain on our staff, because when cities have so little staff, and I'm sure it's true for counties, your staff is already working full speed. How do you divert any of that time and attention towards an intern or someone that you're trying to mentor? So I'm hoping that we can open that door a little bit.
I think you're right about that. That's very aspirational and inspiring to kind of hear about that. We struggle on the idea of interns, not because it isn't a great way to get more professionals into the field, but exactly like you're saying, I see how taxing an FTO program is on my police officers that are designed to train field officers. And that's something that's part of their normal job duties. And so the idea of taking somebody who does not have those kind of responsibilities and saying, I know you're busy, train this person. It adds a wrinkle. That said, I do think mentorship in particular, a little bit aside from internships, is still important. And I view it as tied in with succession planning. You know, small organizations like mine, we just created a position for an assistant finance director. That position coming in will have a great roadmap to take the reins for my finance director, which creates a certain measure of redundancy and really helps build a secure organization while helping that person not immediately step in to a department head role within the city. We've certainly rolled out mentorship programs in police and fire as well to great success. I find that that is a great way to help keep newer employees who might feel like they're outsiders to start because they're walking into an established environment. But it also shows a pretty deep appreciation for your experienced employees as well. When you say, you're doing a great job, we want you to mentor some of our newer staff. I find that mentors enjoy that process as much, if not more, than some of the mentees do, and so that's very successful for us.
You're both right, and I concur that sometimes it is difficult to get current staff to agree to take a person on because where will you find that time? It seems to be more prevalent with social workers and probation agents. I know quite often internships there. However, if you can do short project-based internships, people are more receptive. I know the Minnesota Association of County Administrators has had a long time program with Metropolitan State University to take graduate students that are in the public administration program and pair them up for a project. So the county can come with a pre-made project and the graduate students can choose that project as their capstone project. So kind of it's a win-win for the student and the county, but it's project-based, limited time, and that seems to be successful for some.
That's great. Well, we're getting close to the bottom of the half hour. This has been a great conversation. And so I want to ask you all this last question, and I want each of you to respond because I want to get your thoughts before we conclude, and I can hand it over to Luna or Jake to wrap things up for us. But, you were talking and Brenda was talking about getting this in the news and the media. So if we would imagine for a minute that what the message you are going to deliver now would be on the front page of every newspaper, would lead every TV newscast. This is our opportunity to share something about cities and counties, about local government and its future. What would you say from your perspective? It remains energizing and encouraging, and is something that the community should know more broadly about local government service and its future. And I'll ask each of you to start. I'll go in the order that's on my screen so I can get each of you. So I'll have Brenda start off.
Oh, I'm full of ideas on this one. I would start with a montage of people who work for cities in very different but unique things, such as the city forester, the city arborist. I mean, I would want the careers that cities actually have to do, even if it's not a job title, but it's a function that they have to perform that would surprise the public. Okay. And that way people can start to see, oh my gosh, they're doing more than I ever thought. And then also include the more expected things like the water plant operator, the wastewater facility, the librarian, all these different things. And then I would say, and we need you. We need you because how do we make these things happen? Cities have boards and commissions. It's not all about at the city council. There are boards and commissions that need your skills. If you have interest in any of these topics, come and talk to us or email us or call us or whatever is comfortable for you, because we need your talent too. That is the springboard for getting people to run for elected office, is to get them on those boards and commissions, have them serve and learn more about it. And if they've got an interest, whatever it is, be it the library, be it the parks, whatever, bring them on board literally, so that they can bring their ideas, their energy, and maybe get a taste for the idea of, I could be that council member. I could do that. And would they want to work for the city too?
That's great.
So that's my thought.
All right. I like it. We're going to record all of these and then get them in the media. We are recording all of these, as a matter of fact. So there you go. LaToya, I'll hand it to you next.
Thanks, Brian. I probably would do a video delivery, something 3D mapping, and really project the slogan, "You are the future." and potentially show where you have showing residents in current roles. And so if you have someone who's really concerned about the climate and maybe 3D her into, or him or her into the role of a public works director, or a firefighter. If there's someone who's a school teacher, project them into being a commissioner, a city commissioner, someone that's teaching and helping make decisions, or a coach. Right, that's park and recreation, and so really get them to see themselves in that role as like we're everyday people doing everyday things that impact. This is you. You are BC.
That's excellent. Thanks. And Jack Swanson, you're up next for me.
So this would be a spinoff of what LaToya talked about, and I'm going to steal something Evan said maybe 45 minutes ago, in that in the city of Cambridge, most of the city employees live in or very near that city, and so it's their neighbors that they're working for. That's the message that I would bring. That's true in my county as well. I think virtually every employee of my county certainly lives in the county and probably lives very close to the county seat. And so what they're doing, whether the job is moving snow or law enforcement or social services or whatever the case might be, what they're doing is providing a service for their neighbors. That's the message that I would carry forward.
Excellent. Jessica, you're next in the round robin.
Well, we like to say here, and it might be on our website, counties matter. So we actually here at AMC just created a video that you can watch, and it basically does exactly what LaToya was just saying. And I'm glad this is recorded because I want to go back and listen to what you said. It was beautiful at the end there, but showing all the various jobs, and it's showing and explaining the areas of your life that counties touch. So I would say counties matter, the work is important, and there is room for you here.
Excellent. Evan, you're the cleanup hitter.
No pressure, and Jack already stole mine. So I just want to start with a thank you for the Citizens League for inviting us to participate, as well as the Center for Rural Policy and Development. I really get energized hearing what other great professionals are doing in the area and what we can be doing. Plainly put, public service matters. Local government matters. Cities, counties, and school districts existed yesterday, we exist today, and we will exist tomorrow. We know that we need to continue to provide service to our communities throughout the state, and we know that finding and keeping talented professionals is more challenging than ever. We have an opportunity here to tell our story, to build better partnerships, and support the next generation of public servants to build a community. I think that's what we need to be doing. I'm pretty excited to see what comes next.
Excellent. Well, thank you all so much for spending this time with us. We really appreciate your expertise, your insights, the fantastic work that you're doing at the local level. It's so important, as we've talked about. It really does bring all of us together. It really is where democracy comes to life for our citizens. And so it's just great, and as you said, inspiring to hear these stories and ideas from all of you. And I think hopefully will give us all a lot to think about as we move forward from this conversation. So with that, I'll hand it over to Jake Loesch from Citizens League to wrap it up. But keep in mind that these conversations are recorded and online at the Citizens League website, and this series between Citizens League and Center for Rural Policy and Development called Interconnected has been going on for 5 years, and you can go back and watch past episodes at the website as well there too. So thanks for the opportunity to moderate and be with you all today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian. And Brenda, LaToya, Evan, Jack, Jessica, thank you so much for your insights, for participating in this. Public service is important. You all play really critical roles. And it's been fascinating to hear the discussion. It was fascinating for us to dig in on this report. I know I learned a lot about local government that I wouldn't have known, and I think there's so much more opportunity to keep that education going. So Jessica, I'm probably going to be doing the same thing, rewatching this and figuring out what those headlines are that we're going to try and pitch. So you will, if you signed up to everyone listening in today, you will get this recording link soon. Feel free to share it widely and stay tuned for future interconnected conversations. We appreciate you all being with us today. Have a great afternoon.
You.
And thanks.
Thank you.